Have you ever felt like you weren't, everybody else has just a whole totally different way of looking at this than I do? I think we all have at times, haven't we? It's like, wow, I just don't see it that way. I see this differently. And trust me, war is no place for boys like this. He's asking too big of questions. And he's too naive to be involved in such a thing. He wants to go home. He had a good life and he didn't realize it. I can relate to that exceptionally well. All right, he went slowly to his tent and stretched himself on a blanket by the side of the snoring tall soldier. In the darkness, he saw visions of 1,000-tongued fear that would babble at his back and cause him to flee, while others were going coolly about their country's business. 1,000-tongued fear. Where do you think you borrowed that 1,000-tongued thing from? How do you get a phrase like that? Where do phrases like this come from? He just pulled it out of his back pocket. That's a euphemism. Did he?
It sounds like mythology of some kind.
Sounds like some sort of mythology. Okay. Anybody else? Give it a shot. Thank you, Raquel. Anyway.
Kind of read it, kind of reminds you of Satan. It says, fear that would battle at his back and cause him to flee.
Okay, so Babel's in there, and we think
And
of.
so if you think of like Eve and the serpent,
Okay.
opposite end, just like Satan.
Okay, very good. Babel, the Tower of Babel, Babylon. What else? This may be a grasp, but on the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit was depicted as what? Anybody know? Weren't they tongues of fire? So he takes this image and he flips it. He turns it and makes it negative. He borrows a biblical theme and he makes it demonic. 1,000-tongued fear. You can wake up. Are you awake? Got one eye open. That's good enough. That would babble at his back and cause him to flee, while others were coolly going about their country's business. You're right. He admitted that he would not be able to cope with this monster. He felt that every nerve in his body would be an ear to hear the voices, while other men would remain stolid and deaf. Stolid, that means what? Good job. That's a good word. Write that down. Riley Neff, write it down. Stolid, S-T-O-L-I-D. Thank you. And as he sweated with the pain of these thoughts, he could hear low, serene sentences. How big 5? Make it 6. 7. 7 goes. What does that sound like?
Auctioneer.
An auctioneer. Very good. Most of you didn't get that. It's an auctioneer. And he's taking bets. Not so much like that as a gambler as well. It's kind of a combination of the two. Remember back where Wilson says you can bet on it? the man that bets on my running will lose his money, that's all. And now, so he took that phrase that Wilson used and he put it in his own brain and said, and he could hear the bets being laid down. Or the auctioneer saying, make it 6, how about 7? 7? How about 8? 8? It's a combination of betting and auctioneering. It's a playing of odds. And he's saying, it sounds like he's going to lose, right? Because the bidding's going up rather than down. You get that? 5, 6, 7. It's going up. The odds are greater that he's going to run than not. He stared at the red, shivering reflection of a fire on the white wall of his tent until, exhausted and ill from the monotony of his suffering, he fell asleep. All right. Chapter 3. And your first worksheets are due today, correct? That's pages 21 through, is it 24?
Yep.
Now I have worksheets completed through chapter 5. So if you'll turn into me 21 through 24, I will give to you 25 through 29.
I'm gonna get those tomorrow. Never mind.
Yeah, you have another day.
Thank you.
And where are those ones too?
Which one?
Oh.
These? I'm going to make these due Wednesday. These are due Wednesday, so I'll put that on the board. 25 to 29. Somebody pick all those up?
Play got it.
You did? You got them all, Clay? Did you get everybody's picked up?
Yeah.
Thank you. Would you hand these out then? Thanks.
Pages 25.
Raquel, you have a question? Raquel, Miss Tucker may have the floor. Yes.
So number 7 on the worksheet for page 12 through 16.
12 through 16.
It says, as Henry studied the faces of his companions, why did he suffer disappointment? So
Henry studied the faces of what?
his companions, he suffered disappointment.
Here you go, Raymond.
So
Riley,
I,
this is yours. I'll get it to you in a minute. No, I'll email it. That is me. Go ahead.
so I marked on there the answer, and then I said I don't quite get why this disappoints him, and he told me to ask in class.
Oh, very good. Number 7, 16 through 20? Or 12 through 16?
12 through 16.
Okay. Help me out. What was the last question? What does it say?
Again, saying he's well regimented to content respects and
It's on page 16, the big
Paragraph?
paragraph
Okay.
above the middle.
About the middle.
second quarter.
Yeah.
The youth studied the faces of his companions, ever on the watch to detect kindred motions. He suffered disappointment because he didn't see it. Because he did not see in them a kindred emotion. And that was disappointing to him. He was wanting somebody who shared his deep-seated fears. And they probably did. They just were masking it well. Or some, they had, they either were masking it well, Or they didn't allow it to become a conscious thought. It was there, but they didn't dwell on it.
They're guys.
Well, what's Henry? A girl?
No, he seems kind of feminine though. Like his
Excuse me?
emotions.
So a guy can be feminine?
No,
Seem
no,
fem-
that's not what I mean.
Okay,
He's
explain.
maybe a bit more emotional,
Yeah, he seems more emotional
or
than...
he lets himself acknowledge it more than everybody else. Like they're just like, whatever, I'm gonna be excited. I'm not gonna think about those
This is
things.
good,
And he
okay.
chooses to think about it.
Yeah, and so it just seems a little bit more, I don't know,
Yeah,
a little bit more
Choosing
like
not
girl
to think
emotional.
about
he's
stuff
not quite
much
as
he-
gruff, I guess. Like,
Weird guy though.
Interesting. I like what you're saying. Okay, so you're saying that men may have feelings like that, but we don't access them as readily or as freely as women do? Acknowledge them maybe? Talk about them?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah,
I mean,
because like what
obviously
his
we're not
companions
men,
are,
but...
they're masculine, and he's not.
Okay, say that again.
I mean, obviously we're not men, but it seems like guys tend to hide it and not bring it out nearly as much as women. And he seems to even be pushing it with his other comrades.
What do you think? What do you think?
If I was in that situation, I wouldn't be doing what he's doing.
You wouldn't? Okay. How about you?
Oh,
You what?
just keep to myself.
Okay. How about you? What do you think?
They're right.
You don't want to weigh in on this conversation?
I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know if I could make a decision now because I'm not in that situation.
But you do have, and you can make an observation. We're not asking you to make a decision.
No, I know. I don't know. I'd probably ask around a little bit, but
But we're also women. And so we tend to do that a little bit more and have our emotions more on the outside, to where you men seem to just keep it bubbled up. And not even like it never comes out. It just, in a public sense, it seems to stay down.
you don't talk about it like we do. Usually.
We want to make sure everybody else feels the same way. You guys don't.
Yeah.
Our male ego gets in the way. Yeah. So, the one beautiful thing about women, okay, let's say,
Just fine.
let's, what?
Okay.
Let's say that,
Choose
let's
your
put
words.
this, let's look at this as being created in the image of God, okay? Imago Dei. So if I'm created in the image of God, but we are created in the image of God, then it would make sense that when you put the two together, male and female, we complement each other because, and we fulfill different roles, but we complement each other emotionally and intellectually. So, not to make glib or a generality out of this, not to make glib comments or overarching generality. Women have a tendency to access their emotions much more quickly than men do. Now, they have done interesting studies about the human brain. We do have two hemispheres and connecting fibers in between. And the left has linguistics, the analytical thinking, the right is more emotive and artistic and that sort of thing. Supposedly, I mean, this, who knows what the science will say in another 100 years, but this is where we are right now. Women have more connective tissue between the two hemispheres of their brain, which means that women access both sides of their brain at the same time. Men tend to have less, and we tend to be more left brain. Now I say tend to, because obviously that is not universal. In this story, it's obviously not universal. Henry is more able to access the right hemisphere of his brain more so than his fellows. Why, we don't know. We don't know why sometimes that happens in humanity. I didn't know whether it's they were created that way or their environment encouraged that. But in certain men are able to do this better than others. Artists have a real hard time with this because they tend to access the right side of the brain a lot more than most male artists. So what we have going on in this story is a young man who has a more let's make it real. Literature is art. Who's writing the book? An artist. Stephen Crane. So obviously he has something processing-wise that's different than men around him, and so he's asking basic questions that most men won't ask. Because they have an ego to protect. I don't want to look weak. I don't want to appear like I can't handle this. I've got this. Leave me alone. So let me do my own thing. Don't ask troubling questions. You see, to us, questions of the nature that Henry's asking are troubling. They ask of us to feel. We don't like to do that. We don't like to access our feelings. That's why war is so problematic for males. Because it causes us to feel. And the way we deal with that is to sublimate, to press down, to push away our emotions until we fall asleep. And right at that point, we wake up. And we get the point. Riley plays falling asleep in your class. So, when this begins to happen and men have to start accessing their feelings, when I started into therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder, when I began that process, I had to start accessing feelings. I had a lot of fear, tremendous amount of fear. I was afraid of everything, basically. And to the point that it created some paranoia. So there's a point at which you have this thing called post-traumatic stress disorder, and it begins to look a lot like other mental disorders. Paranoia, schizophrenia. There are several disorders that go right hand in hand with it. And the problem is, with all these emotions deep down inside, this woundedness, these things that you've done as a soldier, and Austin, I want you to listen carefully because it's going to happen if you end up in combat of any kind. If you have to fight and defend yourself or your fellow soldiers, well, you don't know where you're headed, so you don't know what will happen. But you end up wounded deep inside in your soul, and it's an emotional pain. So the problem is dredging it up and working it through. Kind of getting all the bugaboos out. It's like pulling out all of the monsters under the bed and out of the closet and facing them and finding out, hey, that was normal. So what I had to discover, and what Henry's dealing with going into this, is that war creates an emotional reaction within a man that he's not prepared to deal with. What do women do when they go through a crisis? An emotional crisis. They talk. What do? We shut up. We close down. We shut down. And we become emotionally unavailable. And the deeper the scars, the more unavailable we become. So, my personal opinion is, Henry, where is Henry working or going to school? Do you remember that? That first school he attended? Who were some of the people that worked there? Not Henry, I'm sorry. Stephen Crane. Remember
The
that?
seminary.
Yeah, and who worked there?
Civil War veterans.
Civil War veterans. I'll bet Henry's getting lots of post-traumatic stories told to him. And being the kind of man that he is, having that extra connection, those connecting fibers in his brain, more readily accessing the feeling behind them. And his artistic bent is allowing him to get into those emotions and understand them in a way that the veterans didn't.